military steps up coastal defenses as the country raises its combat readiness. Monkeypox reaches Taiwan, but experts say there's no need for alarm. As we come to the end of Pride Month, we look at how marriage equality has evolved worldwide and where Taiwan fits in. And a launch of a Taiwan Encyclopedia that gives the country's own perspective of its history. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chen. Taiwan's kicking off military drills in a southern part of the country aimed at hardening its coastal defense. This follows exercises that wrap up over the weekend, which focus on anti-air capabilities. China is continuing to pressure the island, sending dozens of warplanes into Taiwan's defense identification zone. Jaime Okan reports.
These are called Stingers. They're American-made anti-air missiles. Military officials say that this weapon will play a significant role in Taiwan's defense. The military practiced using the weapon this weekend on drones meant to represent enemy planes. These annual drills, known as Divine Bow, are focused on air defense.
实弹操演是我们训练非常重要的一环，不但可以增加官兵的实战经验，也可以让他们知道自己的强项跟弱点在哪里，加以改进。我想对我们的战力提升是有非常大的帮助的。
Last week, Taiwan scrambled its fighters and deployed missile defense systems as Chinese warplanes neared its airspace. China, which doesn't recognize Taiwan as a country, has not ruled out the use of force to take the island, and regularly flies warplanes into Taiwan's defense zone. With 250 more of these Stinger missiles expected to be delivered in 2026, the Divine Bow drill is one of many ways that Taiwan is keeping its forces alert and bolstering its combat readiness. Chris Ma and Jaime Okan for TaiwanPlus.
Tackling China and its growing influence was high on the agenda at a G7 summit in Germany on Sunday. Leaders of the world's richest nations, or Group of 7 nations, also discussed military support for Ukraine and independence from Russian energy. One of the big-ticket announcements to emerge is a $600 billion infrastructure and sustainable development initiative targeted at developing countries. The program is designed to rival China's Belt and Road Initiative, which operates in over 100 countries.
I want to be clear. This isn't aid or charity. It's an investment that will deliver returns for everyone, including the American people and the people of all our nations. It will boost all of our economies. It's a chance for us to share our positive vision for the future and let communities around the world see themselves and see for themselves the concrete benefits of partnering with democracies. Because when democracies demonstrate what we can do, all that we have to offer, I have no doubt that we'll win the competition every time.
Russian missiles have hit the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv for the first time in weeks. At least 2 people were killed in a strike early Sunday that hit residential buildings and a kindergarten. It's the first time missile strikes have caused significant damage in a capital in nearly 4 weeks. Pro-Russian forces also took a strategic city in eastern Ukraine over the weekend. Russia has stepped up airstrikes on Ukraine as Group of 7 leaders gather for talks. Ukraine's president is expected to push for more heavy weapons when he addresses the meeting later on Monday. The global outbreak of monkeypox has reached Taiwan. A student who returned from Germany this month was confirmed the first case here on Friday. He's in hospital with mild symptoms. Officials told 9 people who've been in close contact to monitor their condition. Monkeypox can spread through respiratory droplets or bodily fluids. Its symptoms include fever and pustules. It can be fatal, but scientists say it doesn't transmit easily, and a strain now spreading worldwide has a death rate of just 1%.
这一次西非出来是比较弱的一种哦，那之前有一些比较强的哦，那它的那个痘看起来就比较明显，而且它的致死率也可以高到10% 左右。
Taiwan recorded 28,580 new cases of COVID-19 and 91 COVID-linked deaths on Monday. While the number of daily new cases is tailing off, the number of deaths has yet to follow. This has experts looking into the data from countries that have seen their outbreaks ease. Experts warn that this COVID wave may not be the last, especially as Taiwan considers reopening its borders, but say fatalities should subside in the coming weeks.
看这个他们的确诊高峰呢，相距照4个礼拜，这个是最长的。那其他国家的延迟呢，就是并没有，大概都是在这个范围之内。1月初到7月中的时候呢，应该就会降到这个双位数。
Taiwan's Vice President William Lai is back on his feet again after undergoing back surgery on Sunday. On Facebook, Lai said the surgery was a success and that he is already able to walk. President Tsai Ing-wen and politicians from both the ruling and opposition parties have left comments wishing him a quick recovery. The presidential office says Lai had herniated discs in his spine. Taiwan is expected to hike the prices of electricity for the first time in 4 years on Monday, as the government grapples with rising energy costs triggered by the war in Ukraine. The possible hike would also follow 4 days of record-level power consumption last week. Taiwan's electricity prices are strictly regulated, but the governing Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP, says it's increasingly difficult to maintain low energy costs with soaring global commodity prices. Even though the price hike is unlikely to impact smaller households that use less energy, officials from the opposition Kuomintang, or KMT, have implored the government not to raise prices.
疫情还在高原期，通膨又是急剧的飙升，失业率也创新高。调涨民生电价的话，这会变成压垮人民生活好日子的最后一根稻草。
A new Taiwan Encyclopedia is set to be launched on Monday in the United States at one of the biggest international gatherings for Taiwan scholars. The World Congress of Taiwan Studies is being held Monday to Wednesday at the University of Washington, Seattle. It brings together Taiwan-focused scholars from Asia Pacific, North America, and Europe. The Encyclopedia of Taiwan Studies includes sections on politics, sociology, women's studies, music, and art. The online edition will launch later this year, with a print edition to follow. Our reporter Louise Watt spoke to Xinhua Michael Xiao, the editor-in-chief of the Encyclopedia.
Could you tell us, please, what is unique about this encyclopedia?
Well, the unique twofold. One is to show to the world academic community about the fruit, the product, the achievement of Taiwan study that has begun in about 1990s. And secondly, to provide the Taiwan perspective of what, if you want to know about Taiwan, it is better to go through the Taiwanese perspective and the Taiwan eyes. I think rather than being shadowed by the past the China studies or the sinological studies. In the past studies or publications, a lot of them were sort of haunted or affected or biased from the so-called pan-Chinese perspective. I think that is something wrong about that.
What are your aims with this encyclopedia? What are you hoping to achieve?
That we wanted to present to the world, especially community world, that what is the most proper and correct view to look at Taiwan's experience from the history to the contemporary modern period, while we have gone through the Taiwan experience. For example, we will talk about democratization, economic growth. We will talk about civil society. We will talk about the social diversity, ethnic relations. We will talk about the transformation. So I think the aim is to present a right way to look at Taiwan of its own right, of its own merit.
The women's team has won gold at the Archery World Cup Stage 3 in Paris. Taiwan beat India in the recurve finals on Sunday. The victory for Olympian Lei Qianying, Peng Jiama, and Guo Ziying marked the team's first gold medal at this year's World Cup. In April, the trio won bronze in the same event at the Archery World Cup Stage 1 in Antalya, Turkey. The finals will take place in Mexico in October. Coming up, salt like you've never seen it before. We give you a taste of an upcoming light show.
So this is a Yinwei Da Hong Tiao, red coral snapper. Good job. Good job.
If you are in Green Island, you have to come diving here. It is amazing. We're going to go see the oldest coral in the world, over 1,400 years old.
Bubble tea has become such a big hit in the US that when the bubble tea crisis happened back in 2021, the country was hit hard. Did you know that these chewy tapioca bowls are actually from Taiwan? That's right, it's also where the first bubble tea was born. We started to realize that there's a host of toppings we could add to our teas. If you have ever been to a bubble tea shop, you might have heard something like 无糖少冰去冰半糖. But what does that mean exactly?
For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please make sure to download the TaiwanPlus app.
Welcome back. You're watching Taiwan Plus News. On Friday, the United States Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, a landmark decision that granted the right to have an abortion. This spurred protests across the U.S. and the world over. Bing Wang explains the implications.
People across America are taking to the streets after the U.S. Supreme Court struck down abortion rights on Friday. In a 5-4 vote, America's top court overturned Roe v. Wade, a landmark precedent set in 1973 guaranteeing the right across the country to have an abortion.
The legal significance of this ruling means that there is no constitutional protection for the right to an abortion, and it is up to each individual state to decide how it wants to approach the right to access abortion.
13 of the 50 states already have trigger laws in place to immediately restrict access to abortion. Another 13 are expected to follow in the next few weeks.
In states with trigger laws, abortion will become illegal immediately or very, very shortly. And the only thing that was protecting people's right in those states was the federal constitutional right, which is now gone. So there will be a major change. After 50 years, people have enjoyed this right. They won't anymore in those states.
A recent poll in May 2022 showed that the majority of Americans believe abortions should be legal. But in the court opinion striking down Roe v. Wade, 2 U.S. Supreme Court justices agreed that the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which states that the government cannot infringe on a citizen's right to privacy, did not apply to abortions. This is raising concerns about other laws based off the same constitutional rights, such as same-sex marriage.
So while the specifics of their decision overturning Roe don't necessarily relate directly to marriage equality, the fact that these fundamental rights, these unenumerated rights that they talk about, that language, which was very, in my opinion, very broad, that could be used by opponents of LGBTQ plus equality to come after marriage.
Because of the Supreme Court decision, the United States is one of only 4 countries to roll back on reproductive rights since 1994. The other 3 include Poland, El Salvador, and Nicaragua. On the streets, pro-choice activists intend to keep protesting. pushing for Congress to codify the right to abortion into law. Patrick Chen and Bing Wang for TaiwanPlus.
As we heard in a previous report, the overturning of Roe v. Wade has now called into question whether the Supreme Court could reverse the right to same-sex marriage. This development comes at the tail end of Pride Month, a time when people in the U.S. and other countries celebrate the progress made in LGBTQ rights. TaiwanPlus's Rick Glauert takes a look at how marriage equality has evolved around the globe and where Taiwan fits in with the rest of the world.
So, back in 2001, the Netherlands became the first country in the world to legalize marriage between two people of the same sex. And over the next few years, countries across 4 continents followed suit. Then, in 2015, the Supreme Court in the United States made same-sex marriage legal nationwide. It prompted celebrations across the country. 2 years later, Australia joined New Zealand to become the second place in the Pacific with equal marriage rights. Over here in Taiwan, 2017 was also the year the country's highest court ruled that the ban on same-sex marriage was unconstitutional. Shortly after that, in 2019, the legislature passed a same-sex marriage law. It was the first of its kind in Asia. Now, Thailand looks set to become the next country in the region to join the same-sex marriage club. The country's parliament is considering 2 bills that would make it legal. Japan, on the other hand, had been making progress on LGBTQ rights over the last few years, but recently there, a court ruled in favour of the ban on same-sex marriage. So it's Taiwan that is the clear leader when it comes to LGBTQ rights in Asia, and the region as a whole has a lot of catching up to do.
That was Rick Glauert for TaiwanPlus with an update on global same-sex marriage rights. For more on marriage equality and other LGBTQ rights issues in Asia, Rick spoke to prominent Taiwanese LGBTQ activist Jennifer Liu, who helped push for the country's landmark same-sex marriage legislation.
And do you think life for LGBTQ people in Asia is improving?
I will say in Taiwan, according to our survey, the society's atmosphere and acceptance is growing and growing. However, discrimination still exists, and we are trying our best to change the society to be a better environment for the LGBT community. And given the progress in the region, we can see pretty optimistic future. However, because the Asia region, a lot of countries still don't have stable democracy. So that's a harder situation for the civil society to fight for their rights. So I will say that awareness and visibility is going up, and more people start to discuss about that. But I would say we still need more time and energy and efforts to make LGBT individuals to live better.
And compared to places like Europe or the Americas, what challenges do countries in Asia face when it comes to LGBTQ rights and marriage equality?
Still in a lot of Asian countries, people see LGBT still as Western issues. Is still some kind of atmosphere that people on the ground don't think LGBT individuals are their friends or their family members. So that will be much more complicated if you see LGBT only a Western issue, but not global issues. So I think Taiwan can be a really good example and role model that we are aware of LGBT, our friends and family, LGBT rights, our human rights, and also we find some way, some strategy to make LGBT and our traditions to be coexisted. This is something I think very important in the region.
Why do you think it is that Taiwan has taken a lead when it comes to LGBTQ rights in Asia?
I think civil society in Taiwan is very strong and active. especially after sunflower movement, you can see younger generation, they believe their efforts can make the society better. This kind of belief and this kind of faith, I think, driven the civil society to do more and fight for our rights. So I think this kind of inspiration actually impact other Asian activists, and they can see the hope, especially the similar faces in the television or on the internet, and that can encourage other Asia activists to find their own strategy, but based on the Taiwan experience.
A special art exhibition in southern Taiwan is hoping to give a popular scenic spot a very different flavor using technology. Over the weekend, the Cigu Salt Mountain did some test runs for its upcoming light show festival, which officially kicks off early next month. Eric Gao takes a look.
Salt piles and light shows. This unusual combination comes together at Cigu Salt Mountain in Tainan City in southern Taiwan. Organizers are gearing up for the Light Festival's official opening in early July with some test runs. Lots of people went to get a sneak peek.
那个夕阳下来，你就会有一些那个云彩，光雕的感觉就趣味性会比较多一点。会有一些图案在那个岩上面，还不错啊，会带朋友一起来看。
3D light sculptures and animations are projected onto the salt piles. Organizers hope to mix history and technology together in this event.
特别选在全台湾最古老的金三角瓦盘盐田这边作为一个场景，然后来营造一个缤纷的光影的一个艺术。
The festival kicks off on July 2nd with light shows every evening and special displays on the weekends. As Naya Zhou and Eric Gao for TaiwanPlus.
The outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic hit Taiwan's tourism and catering industry hard. One of the most affected spots in the country is the Shiling Night Market in Taipei. But organizers say the market was in decline even before the pandemic, and they're now working to regain the trust of local consumers. TaiwanPlus reporter Alice Chen has more.
This is one of Taiwan's most famous attractions, Shiling Night Market. It's not dark yet, but this vendor is already busy preparing food for the evening. Once a bustling scene, things have changed here since COVID-19. At its peak, Shiling Night Market attracted 100,000 visitors a day, many of them international tourists. This brought high profits to the vendors. But now, their average revenue is down 20 to 30%.
更惨啦！今天是礼拜日，好不好？礼拜日你有看到人啦？你平常我跟你讲了，现在都没什么人。
Nearly 300 vendors have been forced to close. That's almost 15% of stores. But the slowdown in the night market is not just because of the pandemic.
观光客一窝蜂进来之后，整个夜市就变掉了。当业者面对是附近的居民跟附近的学生，他会抱着做回头客的心态。 东西会好吃，价格会便宜，分量会多。可是当他面对是国外观光客的时候，他的心态不一样。他认为这个是一次性消费，所以说就会抱着有一种不正确的心态在营业啊。所以说这10几年自己做坏掉。
The market's reputation was also tainted by a controversy involving fruit sellers who overcharged foreign customers. The local government launched an investigation and fined the offending vendors.
就是之前给人家的印象不好，这个印象要再慢慢的回来，需要时间。需要时间的话，就是说要透过办一些大型活动，吸引人家回来。那当他们再来逛士林夜市，再来这边消费的时候，觉得说，好像有以前那个味道了，变比较友善了。这希望说借由这样慢慢转型。
The once prosperous tourist spot may have suffered heavy losses, but Shiling Night Market is determined to rebuild its image and bring back the crowds. Alice Chen for TaiwanPlus.
Plastics are a huge environmental problem because they cannot be broken down by natural processes. But a recent study has found that a certain kind of insect could be the secret weapon against plastic pollution. A team of microbiologists from the University of Queensland say that the larvae of the darkling beetle, known as superworms, can eat polystyrene plastic. After their meal, microbes in the worm's stomach use enzymes to break the plastic down further. The team's long-term goal is to use enzymes modeled after those found in the superworms to process plastic waste at recycling plants.
The idea is we want to characterize the enzyme better, then reproduce it in the lab, and then have like an enzyme cocktail that we can then use to actually degrade. And that's easier to scale. You can grow bacteria in the lab or in industrial setting in large batches, produce those enzymes, and then we want to, well, two steps, right? First, we want to mechanically degrade the polystyrene, and then the second step is we actually add the enzymes to it to break it further down. I think that's our long-term vision.
Gold miners in northwest Canada have found a different kind of buried treasure, the mummified remains of a baby woolly mammoth. The nearly complete female specimen was named Nung Cho Ga, which means big baby animal in a Han language, which is spoken by indigenous people in the area. Nung Cho Ga is the best preserved woolly mammoth ever discovered in North America. The animal is estimated to have died during the Ice Age, nearly 30,000 years ago. Thanks for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chen. Finally today, we'll leave you with images of the Pride Parade in Warsaw. Thousands of Poles and Ukrainians joined the parade to call for peace and demanded an end to discrimination against the LGBT+ community. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the TaiwanPlus app. Stay safe and see you next time.